Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome back to Tag Tuesday. I didn't do a tag last week. I'd almost forgotten that Kelly had tagged me to do the Jane Austen July book tag. Thank you, Kelly. It's Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading. I'll leave a link to her video and her channel down below. I believe the tag was originated by Katie over at Books and Things, and I'll leave a link to her channel as well. They're just 7 questions, so this should go relatively quickly. I thought I'd come outside, give the dogs a chance to be on video perhaps without barking at the neighbors across the street, and to give a little bit of a different change of scenery. Hopefully I'll get this in before it rains, because that's what it looked like it's going to do here anytime soon. So here we go. Question number 1 is, what is your favorite Jane Austen book? I forgot to bring my copy out here, but my favorite Jane Austen book is Persuasion. I like the story, I like the characters. So then question number 2 is your favorite Jane Austen protagonist, and that would obviously then have to be Anne Elliot. Persuasion, if I'm not wrong, was the last book that Austen actually wrote before she died. Now, I know Northanger Abbey was published, I think, at the same time as Persuasion, but Northanger Abbey had actually been written when she was much younger. And I think Anne Elliot shows the signs of kind of a mature writer, thinking about a more mature woman, looking at marriage and family obligations and all those kinds of things. So I just thought, and I've always liked Persuasion the best. Prompt number 3 is a book Jane Austen would approve of. I chose 2. One is one of my happiest reads of this year, and that's Leonard and Hungry Paul by Ronan Hession. I saw that Shawn the Book Maniac did a Zoom interview with Ronan Hession and his channel, and that was just delightful, and I'll leave a link to that down below. But I think Jane would approve of this because it's a book about families, a book about siblings, a book about friends, a book about relationships and love, and to a certain extent, in its own way, romance, but under relatively difficult circumstances, one which takes a long time to actually take place. It just feels like a Jane Austen kind of book. And then also I chose Barbara Kingsolver's The Poisonwood Bible. This just seems like a Jane Austen book to me too. It's a book about a family with, I think, 4 or 5 daughters. Right now I'm having a hard time remembering exactly how many, who go off to essentially what would be the Belgian Congo around 1960, 1959, 1960, because their father is a preacher. He is a really flawed religious leader, which is a feature in a lot of Jane Austen novels. Kind of flawed preachers and religious people, or religious leaders, feature a lot in her books. So I thought that might be something she liked. And then there's a relationship between mothers and sisters, and kind of sisters living in isolation with very few other people around and having to rely on one another quite a bit. So I thought that might be a Jane Austen kind of book. Question number 5 is a book on your shelves that Jane Austen would have hated. I chose my biography of James Madison by Ralph Ketchum as my example of a book Jane Austen would have hated. James Madison was the American president during the War of 1812. That was the second war fought between the now United States, or between the United States and Great Britain, and she would have lived during the War of 1812. So I'm just going to guess that she was no big fan of James Madison or the Americans at the time, even though I could be wrong, but that's why I chose that book. Prompt number 5 is a favorite minor character. My favorite minor character is probably pretty obvious to lots of people, and that would be Mr. Collins from Pride and Prejudice. He's just so awful and so amazing and awesome, and just such a great character. But I also chose Captain Benwick from Persuasion. Captain Benwick is kind of a tragic figure whose fiancée dies. It appears as though at some point he and Anne Elliot may be about to embark on a romance, and then he marries Lydia Musgrove after her accident, and he is a character who I think Jane Austen, the writer, would have admired, would have liked, would have thought of as a good man, and I think he's a good minor character. Prompt number 6 is a book you think was inspired by Jane Austen. I'm going to go with My Sister the Serial Killer here by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I chose this book because it involves a pair of very close sisters, one beautiful, one maybe a little bit smarter, one maybe a little bit more conscientious, which reminded me, or at least the smarter versus beautiful thing reminded me of Jane and Elizabeth Bennet. And I don't think that Jane Austen would be the least bit shocked by the idea of these women being serial killers. I think she would have gotten a kick out of that. And then prompt number 7 is the character you love to hate. I chose the Thorpes, John Thorpe and his sister. I believe her name is Isabel, from Northanger Abbey. John Thorpe is just the exact kind of man that I really hate. He is scheming. He's grasping. He's vain. He's very class conscious. He's a braggart, and nothing gives me more pleasure in Northanger Abbey than Thorpe, being proven wrong about so many things, particularly whenever they go out for a drive. He is constantly wrong about how fast his horse can go and all kinds of things, and that gives me a great deal of pleasure, so I guess that means that I love to hate him. Plus, I think he and his sister's plans are fairly well thwarted in the course of the book, if I remember correctly. Maybe they're not. But anyway, that's the character, or those are the characters I love to hate, and John Thorpe being the one I love to hate the most. Anyway, there you go. There's my version of the Jane Austen July book tag. Thank you all for watching, and thanks to Kelly for tagging me to do this awesome tag. Hope you're having a good Jane Austen July.